All right, guys, we are definitely back for another show. So I definitely want to welcome you guys to another episode of Mug City Anglers. I'm your host, Jeffrey Willis, and I am with you guys again tonight. Tonight's topic for the Fishing Tip Tuesday, we're going to be talking about finesse fishing. I'm going to go into details on what rod I like to use, what line I like to use, why I like to use the rod and line hooks. We're going to break the scenario all the way down. All the way down to the tackle, all the way down to the rods, all the way down to the reels, and everything. So you guys just sit back and enjoy as I go through this process and try and break everything down for you guys. First thing I like to start with is safety. Safety is a big, significant piece to being out on the water or bank fishing or whatever it is that you're doing. I always like to talk about the safety side of it because anytime you're out in nature doing anything, it could always be some form of a hazard when being out there. So a couple things that I want to talk about, whether you're bank fishing or whether you're on the lake. First off, with bank fishing, for those of you guys that enjoy bank fishing, I grew up doing it, so I know that you can run into snakes, you can run into alligators, you can run into a lot of different species of or animals out there. So just being aware of your surroundings, making sure that you're watching your steps, making sure that you're in areas where you can just pay attention to a lot of the small things that are around you, man. The best advice I can give anybody, especially when bank fishing, is just, be aware of your next step, because you can step down into something and you may not know what's down there. A lot of times the grass are high, especially when you're trying to catch big fish. You're oftentimes in places where, for one, we shouldn't be. So that means it calls for sometimes dangerous situations. So let's just continue to monitor those things. I always say, if you conceal to carry, please do so. It comes in handy sometimes. You just never know. And then again, if you guys are out on a lake, boat safety is always an important piece. So wear your life jackets. Take somebody with you. And if you can't take nobody with you, just make sure that you're able to call for help if necessary. So there are always things that are on the boat, whether it be whistle or whether it be a flasher or anything like that that could get someone's attention if in case of an emergency. So those things are always important. I always like to say, man, just proper preparation prevents support performance. So you always want to put yourself in the best safety environment as you possibly can. So that would be the safety tip for the day. Just make sure you're aware of what's around you, because those things are very, very, very important. Make sure you get back home to your family. So that would be the safety tip, just being aware. Jumping right on into finesse fishing, I got some notes over here that I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of, just to make sure I don't leave anything out. But we're gonna jump right into it. The rod I like to do a lot of my finesse fishing with, a lot of people like spinning reels. I'm not really a big fan of them, although I do have two on my boat. I rarely pull them out, but I do own two of them. But I do most of my bank fishing, finesse fishing, that is, on a 7.3 heavy. It's my Ducket rod. It's out of the Ducket series. I really like these rods. They have a really soft and sensitive tip. I can feel just about any bite that I really need to feel with the sensitive tip. It's a fast taper that I have, so it's really cool. I also have it paired up on a Dowel 7-to-1 gear ratio reel. But here's the significant piece to this particular setup, man. I downsized my line, and I'm gonna tell you guys why. I started on 20-pound test fluorocarbon, and then I realized by having some conversation with a bunch of older guys that downsizing your line give yourself a little bit more action on your bait. So I went from 20-pound test fluorocarbon. Being out on Lake Okeechobee, you're in a lot of heavy vegetation, so you'll think, logically, the thicker line would be more ideal. But in reality, the thicker line take away from your actual profile of your bait, which makes a significant difference. I went from throwing 20 pounds down to like 15, and my hookup ratio kind of increased significantly. Okay, so I'm gonna jump right into it, and that would be the line of choice. The next thing I want to talk about real quick is just, and you can use P-line, you can use Power Pro, you can use, there's a variation of different brands out there. I stick to fluorocarbon by P-line just because it's a very well-known brand. It's a very durable brand. I don't break off a lot with it, so that's just been my brand of choice. There's a lot of different variations of styles and brands that are out there, but Power Pro would just be my top favorite, so that's what I've always stuck with. Another thing I want to talk about real quick, a lot of people, they vary on hook size. Hook size is important. I've found that downsizing from a 5-out down to a 4-out, I've increased my hookup ratio. I think also that having that smaller profile hook gives my bait a little bit more action as well. So I went from a 5-out. A lot of times I throw these Cincos. When you're finesse fishing, there's a variation of worms or soft plastic that you can use as well. I really stick and stand tall on these Cincos just because these stick baits, man, they just simply catch fish. That's really the reason for it. I grew up throwing red shads, June bugs, and different things like that, just regular speed worms type deal. But since I've kind of jumped into the professional side of fishing, I've noticed that these Cincos are absolutely amazing. So that would be that. One other key feature to the big puzzle is just your weight. Your weight makes a significant difference as well. Sometimes downsizing your weight too could be extremely key. If you get out there, man, and you're throwing like a 3/16 or an 1/8 ounce and you're not really catching any fish, you might want to go down to a weightless bait. I always start with a 3/16, and if I have to downsize, I go down to an 1/8 ounce just to. All right, so let's jump right into it. So I'm gonna give you guys two things real quick. I'm gonna talk a little bit about bank fishing, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about doing it from the boat side. Okay, just because I know that there's two different kinds of fishing these particular baits. Okay, so again, bank fishing is figure out what laydowns you have around you, what grass areas you have around you, what shaded areas you have around you. Those are going to be your high potential areas. Those are the areas that you want to try and focus on when you're out there. Okay, a lot of us fish a lot of like what are they called? Red chads and the June bugs and the dark colors or whatever the case may be. Those are the areas that you want to try and target. So any sticks you may see in the water, any little small laydowns that could be a stump or anything like that, those were those high potential areas. Those where you want to try and flip a bait into and fish them as slow as possible. So when you're bank fishing, usually in most areas, you can get from anywhere between 0 to 5 within 5 yards away from the bank, which is a pretty decent area to try and fish. You want to always try and make long casts. Basses are very territorial. They're very aggressive. But if you walk up on them, they're definitely going to run. So you want to try and make you a long cast. And the most important thing I can possibly tell anybody when finesse fishing is fish your bait slow. You have to be extremely slow. And the bass will kind of dictate exactly what it is that they're looking for and what it is that they want. And then once you figure out that pattern, you can just kind of fish it that way. Unfortunately, sometimes it causes you to fish really slow. Sometimes it causes you to kind of like, hop it a little bit. Those you got to just kind of play with your retrieve until you try and figure out what it is that they're doing that day. Because today they may be doing this. Tomorrow they could be doing something completely different. You may even have to downsize your bait. So those are just things that you have to kind of be aware of when you're out on the water. Those things are all important. Those are the difference maker between catching a lot of fish or catching 2 or 3. Another thing I want to talk about is just doing it from the boat side. Anytime you're doing it from the boat side, it's still equivalent. You still want to know what your water depth is. You still want to know what your water clarity is. You still want to be able to identify those things right away, because when pitching, sometimes they can be on your outside edge. And if they're not on the outside edge, so they can be back up in there a little bit. So you have to be able to decipher where they are and how they want to eat that day. Again, like I said, same thing with bank fishing. You kind of have to identify what it is, and then you can fish that pattern. But you got to identify it first. So first, identifying where they at. Either they're eating fast or they're eating slow. So that's gonna dictate your retrieve. Is basically what I'm trying to tell you. All right. I talked about weights. I talked about hooks. I talked about colors. I talked about baits. Again, that could be anything. Another key point is real quick is anytime you're finesse fishing, you want to stay in the ballpark of 12 to 15 pound line, test line. You want to stay in that area only because you want the action of your bait to maintain the same performance. If you go to a heavier line, you don't get the action of the bait doesn't get the correct action that it should, and it makes a significant difference in fishing or catching fish, I should say. Try it. I'm telling you, I started with 20 pound test line, and when I downgraded to 15, it made a significant difference in the amount of bites that I had. That's another key thing. Again, a long stock rod, something that you can set the hook from far away, because again, like I said earlier, you want to make those long casts. So if you made a 20-yard cast, you want to be able to set that hook if you get a fish on from 20 yards away. So having a long stocky rod that got some action in the tip of it will give you the ability to set the hook from far off. Now, when you get that bite, the absolute first thing you cannot do is set the hook right away. A lot of times when you get a bite, you get that doom doom, and you know it's a fish. Give yourself that 1001, that 1002, because that 1001, that 1002 is going to give that fish the ability to kind of get into that bait a little bit more. That way, when you get ready to set the hook, you got a more chance of hooking that fish versus missing him. So you want to kind of let him get it in his mouth a little bit. So give yourself that 1001, that 1002. You maybe want to give yourself 1003. I say 1002 just because I don't want him to swallow it. And that's one of my main things always I do when I catch a fish is say no blood, because I do not want to make a fish bleed. So if I can get the fish back into the water healthy as possible, that's always key. Now, finesse fishing, it's a mindset. It's definitely a mindset. You have to be prepared. If you know you're going to go out there and finesse fish that day, you got to be prepared to fish slow. So you got to kind of train yourself to not to be in a rush. You got to slow all the way down. You got to kind of like think about it as like moving like a turtle, for example. Like you're going to have to move extremely slow. Unfortunately, that comes with finesse fishing. Down here in Florida, when it get cold, they completely shut off. Like they just do not like the cold water, period. And that water temperature drop below 70 degrees, it's a hard day to fish here in Florida. So it forces you to slow completely down in order to get a bite. So those are key points, man. I want to make sure you guys understand that, because it's very boring, but slowing down could lead to a big fish. You may not catch a whole lot of them, but if you're fishing for 8 hours in a tournament or anything like that, and you're out just having fun with some friends, slowing down a little bit, slowing your presentation down a little bit, will give you the ability to catch some fish. All right, so let's recap real quick. I have a 7.2 heavy fast tip rod. I have 15 pound test. Again, bobber stopper, 3/16 out tungsten, 4-out hook. My soft plastic of choice would be a Gambler Ace Cinco blue tip. Okay. Again, 15 pound test. I have a 7-to-1 gear ratio reel. That's from Daiwa. Daiwa actually made those. My whole reel section is all from Daiwa. They're pretty inexpensive for some of you guys that are just getting into bass fishing. They're pretty inexpensive compared to some of the other brands. And then I haven't had any issues out of them, so they're pretty cool. Again, guys, most important thing when you're out fishing, doesn't matter if you're on a boat or if you're walking down the bank of a canal, be careful. Always be aware of what's around you. Those things are very, very, very important. As I always say too, a guy told me last year, he said, Jeff, anytime that you're out here on this water, you want to make sure you protect yourself at all times. So for those of you guys that are, obviously licensed to carry and all that other kind of stuff, man, you want to make sure you definitely protect yourself while you're out there, because you just never know. Freak accidents happens all the time. And nature has a way of being nature. So definitely be able to protect yourself at all costs. But again, guys, I want to thank you guys just for joining me for the fishing tip I want to definitely thank you guys, man, just for jumping in today with me for the Fishing Tip Tuesday. I look forward to next week. Next week, we're going to jump into a little bit of a moving bait presentation. I'm super excited about that. I'm super excited about these videos, man. If you guys like what we're doing, definitely comment below. Definitely like, share. I'd be more than grateful. Don't forget Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter is all MCA Fishing 21. Check out the website builttolast21.com. I appreciate the efforts and what it is that everybody do with the success of the brand that's moving forward. So I thank you guys in advance, and peace.